I've asked Dr. Youngbauer to talk with us a little bit about how the regional center came to be. You know, so many other people are watching from other states and they're saying, how did California have this come to be? Why doesn't every state have this? So talk to us a little bit about the regional center and how it came to be.
Well, it essentially came from the dedicated efforts of parents. That parents banded together, and again, they would not accept the notion that their child had to go to an institution. But this also was right on the heels of a great deal of social upheaval, and it was the Civil Rights Acts. So this was born in the 60s, and essentially, you know, the gestation period went through the 60s, and in the early 70s is when it was passed. And it was essentially Frank D. Lanterman who penned and championed the legislation, and hence the act is named after him. Now, he's passed, and I'm sure it would be much to his chagrin to know that one of the larger developmental centers, otherwise known as a state institution, has been named after him as well. I'm sure he's spinning in his grave with that one, but it was the legislation that he put forward that essentially kind of signed the doom on the institutions.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the Lanterman Act is for people with disabilities to live in their family home, grow up in their community, attend their local schools, and approach a regional center, which was designed by this legislation, to provide the supports and services that would allow a child to be a fully functioning member of his or her family,
yeah,
and access all community resources.
Yeah.
It was brilliant in its inception and design. And that brilliance really is reflected in the 21 regional centers up and down the state,
yeah,
that have local boards of directors or trustees that set the policies, and the staff that sets the procedures to implement the Lanterman Act. So all 21 use the Lanterman Act as the foundational document and the legislation, but they all interpret it in reference to the unique needs of their community.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize that, quite honestly, and that addresses, because I know there are different people depending on which regional center you're in. It's different circumstances.
Absolutely.
There are different things going on, so I didn't realize that they had different governing boards. That makes a little bit more sense to me. And so, but talk for just a second about the Lanterman Act and so what that covers, because people, you know, somebody's watching in Kansas and they go, so does that mean that my child's covered till they're 5 or till they're 18, and what kinds of things does it cover? Because it's kind of fascinating.
Thanks for mentioning Kansas.
Well, you are wearing a Kansas lanyard there.
University of Kansas.
There we go.
First of all, California, unlike any other state in the Union, has this Lanterman Act. It's actually an entitlement program. So if an individual has a diagnosis of being on the autism spectrum, or having intellectual disabilities, or epilepsy or cerebral palsy that are substantially handicapping conditions, their eligibility is lifelong. It goes from essentially cradle to grave.
There's no aging out.
There's no aging out.
It's amazing.
Now, the thing is that, and we've seen this with some families with children with autism, that as much as they like us, they've had enough of us. And so what they do is they inactivate their cases, and they can reactivate them at any point in time when they need additional supports.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cradle to grave proposition. Now, the Lanterman Act and the regional center system, you know, they're living entities, and as all living entities, they they adapt to their environment, they change over time. And so we've seen an ebb and flow in terms of different services that can be provided. And certainly with some of the economic downturns, recently, in the last decade or so, there's been a kind of a contraction of some of the services that the regional center can provide. There's also now been legislation that we've been seeing sweeping across the country with regard to insurance.
Yeah.
And insurance supporting the services. And so that's changed some of the options that we have at the regional center.
But there's a pretty wide variety, and has been, and maybe you're not carrying as many things now, but a pretty, there are things like respite. Definitely you guys cover ABA. You cover social groups, a wide variety of things. And I'm just aiming for the things that have to do with autism. I'm imagining for all the other different issues that a child or a young adult might come in with. It's just a wide variety. Right. I love that you guys look at the family and not just the individual. I think that that's really remarkable, and we don't see that in too many other places.
Well, I think it kind of reflects the legacy or the point of origin of the Lanterman Act, that it really was families that banded together to make this occur.